Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to this press conference with Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, with the chair of our Rules Negotiating Group, Ambassador Santiago Wills of Colombia. We're joined also by Deputy Director General Angela Ellard, who has responsibility for the rules and fisheries negotiations. We have with us some journalists in person as well as online. You know the drill. If you're participating on Zoom, how to raise your hand. If you virtually raise your hand, we will call on you. The Director General will start with a brief opening statement. Ambassador Wills will do the same, and then we'll take your questions. We'll have just about 30 minutes. So without further ado, Director General, you have the floor, please.
Well, thank you, Keith, and good evening to everyone in the room. Good day to those who are online, wherever you are. It's been a very long day, but it's been a successful day. We had, for the first time, an unprecedented number of ministers and heads of delegations speaking, 104 of them, and representing 128 members. The sheer participation shows the commitment and the dedication and the interest in getting this fisheries subsidies negotiations moving and concluded. I joke that not even as many delegations participated when we were having the meeting to close my nomination. I think Ambassador Santiago Wills is, of course, going to take over when I finish, but let me just make a couple of observations. Today, we were looking for the political guidance, the political support to move forward. And for the first time in 20 years, we have a text that has been agreed and blessed by all the ministers and heads of delegations of the 128 members we have today. Virtually all our members were represented if you count the groups. We couldn't have wished for a better outcome. Let me put it that way, because it means that we can now move to the next steps. So the fundamental conclusion, two things I would like to mention. One is the fact that the fundamental conclusion from the interventions is that members are ready to use the text as a basis for future negotiations. We recognize that there were many issues listed with respect to the text, gaps that need to be filled, differences that members have to bridge, as well as some strengths that were noted. It was also important to note that virtually every member wanted to move in this positive direction. So that's the first observation. The second thing is that it's clear every member wants to conclude a good agreement, a balanced agreement, a quality agreement, and they want to conclude it with some sense of speed, but speed should not give space to just any agreement. So a balanced quality agreement that gets away from the status quo. That is another conclusion that we came to. And then there was this emphasis on importance of technical and financial support for developing country members to develop their fisheries management expertise and capacity for the purposes of being able to implement the agreement and the disciplines therein. And of course, this would contribute to their long-term ability to manage their fisheries sustainably. So I think that when you sit back and look at what we were again looking for from this meeting, political will, support to move forward, support to move forward on the basis of an agreed text. And we got all of that today. So it's been a successful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Wills, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Keith. And as the DG said, we had a long day today. We heard 104 interventions. but I must say that the Director General, Dr. Ngozi, steered the meeting with great ability and stewardship into a successful conclusion. So I admire your strength to do this today. Yes, with strengthening the gavel. I should repeat and maybe highlight what the DG just said. And what was sought from ministers today was political guidance. And I must say that we got it. We did hear that guidance, and we wanted to thank ministers for that. I think a big takeaway from today's meeting is that it is clear from ministers that continuing the status quo is not an option, and that we have a shared responsibility to bring these talks to a meaningful, balanced, and credible conclusion well before MC12. And I think this is very good news. 20 years has been long enough, and if we continue for another 20 years, there won't be any fish left. I was pleasantly surprised that many ministers raised specific aspects of the draft text. To me, this was a clear indication that members are ready and eager to jump into text-based negotiations. So we'll take that step. I believe that the answers today have given us the ingredients to reach a successful conclusion. Those ingredients are a commitment to finish well ahead of MC12, a text that can be the platform for this final phase of the negotiations, and fully empowered heads of delegation in Geneva. It's also evident from today's meeting that, of course, there's still gaps in some issues, but precisely moving into text-based negotiations will allow us to address those gaps and hopefully bridge those differences between members. Beyond the answers to the questions that were raised to ministers, many other issues were raised as well today by ministers, and all of those were well noted, and those will be addressed in text-based negotiations moving forward. As chair, and as I said to the members, I will be there to facilitate the discussions, but ultimately it will be up to members in a give and take exercise to find the landing zones that everyone can live with. So I'll leave it there for now and happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wills. Let's open the floor for questions, and I'm going to take those who are actually here first. So yes, please, you have the floor, followed by Bryce.
Hello, Antonio Broto from EFE. Can you elaborate a little more on the new text? What are the differences between this one and the one proposed in June by Ambassador Wills?
Well, thanks for that question. It's not really a new text. It's precisely the text that was presented at the 30th of June meeting with the revisions that are included. And in saying so, I must clarify that the responses we received from ministers are to move into a text-based negotiations using this as a basis, without implying that they're agreeing today to the exact specifics of the text. So now we need to negotiate that text in this new phase of the negotiations. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bryce, the floor is to you.
Hi, thank you. Bryce Bashik with Bloomberg News. Questions for you, Director General. You mentioned the responses from ministers about the first question you had asked regarding the text. Can you give us a sense for what ministers said regarding the second question about whether special treatment should be offered to the poorest countries? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think that one of the very important things that came out is with regard to that question, is that virtually every minister, all the delegations recognize the importance of special and differential treatment with respect to artisanal fisheries for developing countries, especially the least developed countries. What they take away from listening to them on this issue is that they are supportive of special and differential treatment with regard to artisanal fisheries. Of course, there were, caveats to make sure that this is managed in a way that is sustainable, but there was no mistaking that this was the case.
Sorry, just to follow up, did it sound like they were speaking with one voice on this issue?
I would say so, yes. I'm trying to think whether there was any delegation that said they were not in support of this, and I can't think of one.
Very good. The next question is to Emma Farge. Emma, you have the floor, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Emma Farge from Reuters. I'm wondering if you could comment on how you see prospects for negotiating going forward if you have to continue in a virtual format. I know there's obviously delegations here negotiating in Geneva, but it seems like the only ones who can really make the important and difficult compromises that lie ahead are the ministers themselves. So how confident are you about getting a deal in a scenario where MC12 has to be virtual? Thanks.
Well, maybe I'll start, and if Santiago wants to add. I think the fact that MC12 may be virtual, may. Of course, we are all hoping for the best from COVID and the best for physical. But the fact that it may be virtual is part of what is driving the need to conclude these negotiations before. Because if we can successfully conclude, if there's one bracket left or none, that means that ministers can bless this at MC12. Because negotiating virtually is going to be tough. But now we have heads of delegation here in Geneva, and that was part of what we tried to achieve, that ministers fully empower them to have the necessary flexibilities to come to an agreement. And of course, you know what I said in my statement, that should any delegation get stuck, they should have their colleagues on speed dial. And should there be a need, I will also reach out to the minister. So will Ambassador Wills. So we hope that that combination can really drive the negotiations. Thank you.
Hop, la prochaine question est pour Agnès. Vous avez la parole, s'il vous plaît. Allez-y.
Merci, thank you. Agnès Pedro from AFP. I wanted to know what makes you feel or think that you are closer to an agreement after that day of discussion? After that day of discussion.
I think what makes one feel closer is that, for 20 years, there's not even been an agreed text. For the first time, we have a text that ministers have said, on the basis of this text, let's try to negotiate. Let's now go line by line. And this is something that hadn't happened before. So that's what gives us the hope that we can now move forward and try to get to yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to Zoom now. And the question is to Laurent Serrault from the Swiss News Agency. Laurent, vous avez la parole.
Yeah, thank you, Keith, and thank you for the press conference. Director General.
Wait, sorry, Laurent. Can you wait just a second while we get our earpieces attached here? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Is it okay now?
Yep, it's okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. Director General, so the format was very dynamic, a one-day ministerial on a thematic issue, and you seem to consider that as a big success also in terms of format. So could it be used in other broader and in other thematics in the future in order to make progress? And do you plan to convey another similar meeting before MC12 with ministers again? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Let me start with the latter. No, we're not planning to convene ministers. It could be that when ministers meet on the margins of other meetings, there's the OECD meeting, there are various other meetings longer. One could discuss one issue or the other with them, but no, there's no plan to convene another meeting. Instead, what we want to do is very much focus here in Geneva on trying to move the negotiations forward. And this format, You know, everything is being tried as we try to battle with COVID and what it implies. But of course, if the format is successful and is good practice, we could use it again.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Doug Palmer. Doug, you have the floor, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is my question. My question is for either Dr. Ngozi or Ambassador Wills, whoever feels, or for both of you. It has to do with special and differential treatment and the amount of subsidies. The figure that the NGO community keeps pointing me to is this $22 billion worth of harmful subsidies, of which, that was in 2018, of which about $6 billion was spent by China, they say. So I'm just wondering if China ends up being considered a developing country under this agreement, would that mean that it would essentially be able to continue spending $6 billion annually on harmful subsidies? Just if you could sort of talk about that a little bit. Thanks.
We're all wondering whether it's a trick question. I mean, it's very clear that the disciplines we're trying to put in place is to curb harmful subsidies. So this is targeted at curbing the 22 billion you mentioned of harmful subsidies, no matter which member is applying those subsidies. So that's one. I think that during the discussions, we heard virtually every member agree, including China, that special and differential treatment should apply to least developed and developing country members, I would say, who are in those who are, I'm struggling with how to put it, are poorer developing country members and least developed country members. So I'll leave it there.
Santiago, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, maybe just to add something to what the DG was stating, and sticking to what we heard today in the meeting of ministers. One takeaway from the meeting on the SNDT question we had, for instance, was that it's clear that members want these disciplines, or that members don't want these disciplines to inadvertently impact the livelihood and food security of poor and vulnerable artisanal fishers, of developing and LDC members, but also that other provisions do not undermine the sustainability objective that we're pursuing in the negotiations. So this is part of the conclusions we drew from the meeting today, and this is very much related to how special and differential treatment will be, eventually the parameters of special and differential treatment will be negotiated in the text-based negotiations phase that we're moving into. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Hannah Monacan. Hannah, you have the floor, please.
Yes, hello. Thanks for doing this. This is also a question about special and differential treatment. Obviously, it continues to be an obstacle, and I think you heard plenty of divergent views today from ministers, and particularly from the US and India, kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Do you feel like you had any clarity today on that issue, and how do you think you'll be able to move forward given the sort of very big differences in views on that issue?
As I said at the beginning, when we posed the question on artisanal fisheries and special and differential treatment, I did not hear any member dissenting from saying that, yes, we should have this special and differential treatment and artisanal fisheries for resource poor farmers resource poor fisher people is supported, provided it also goes with the sustainability objectives that we're trying to meet. So I think other aspects of special and differential treatment, which we didn't discuss in the room, if you look at the text, we said, it's the question, sorry, it said a key component or the key component of special and differential treatment with reference to artisanal fisheries. But it did not say it's the only component. And many developing countries ask for policy space. So we fully expect that there'll be negotiations on other aspects of special and differential treatment. And when that comes, then we will know how that is going to be handled.
Thank you very much. The next question is for John Zarakostas. John, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. I was wondering, my question is addressed to the chair. I was looking at some of the WTO data, and I was wondering, sir, the range of the global fisheries subsidies is between 14 billion and 54 billion. What's the breakdown of this range? How much is in developed countries and how much is in developing countries, given you've got major fishing fleets in both developed and developing countries? And how much of this subsidies is due to fuel? Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for that question. And it's a very hard question to answer. And I must confess, I don't have the data here with me. And it's part of the difficulties that we face as well in the negotiations, that we have different sets of data depending on definition of what is a subsidy, of the type of subsidy that it's being granted, how it's being granted. So it's not easy to say, respond precisely to this question. And even more to identify the specifics of subsidies granted in the developing world or by developed members, and even more so those dealing with specific fuel subsidies. I must say that in the negotiations, members have used academic research as part of their interventions in structuring their arguments. And one of those important research that has been used is that of Sumaila and other authors that deal that have been researching on this topic of subsidies. So maybe I would like to defer you to that research. You might find some very detailed information there that could be useful. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. If we keep these questions short, we have time for two more, and I would give them to Chris Horseman and Peter Ungverkorn. Chris, you have the floor. Please keep your question brief.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is to Ambassador Wills. What happens next? Are you going to go away and aim to further refine the negotiating text? And have you heard stuff today which will allow you to remove some of the square brackets and clean up the text for the next time ambassadors discuss this topic? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'll start by the latter question. I don't think that based on today's meeting, we'll be able to adjust the text. I think this is precisely the step that we'll be taking now, and that goes to your first question on what next. Now we're moving to a text-based negotiations. As the DG mentioned at the end of the meeting with ministers, we're both going to be consulting the following days amongst ourselves, but also with members, WTO members, to see how best we can proceed and engage in this new text-based negotiations phase. So I don't have a specific or clear answer at this point, but the idea is that hopefully next Friday that we have a TNC meeting, a general idea of how things will look forward will be presented to members. So for now, that's what I can say there. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much. And the last question is to Peter Ungverkorn. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I'm a little bit puzzled by your talk of a new phase based on the text, because I wasn't aware that the text was not the basis for negotiations. You've already had one revision. So what is new? What is new in that's going to be happening from now on?
Um, hmm? I think what is new, as Ambassador Wills was working on this and put forward the text, there's never been a line-by-line negotiations, and that's the ultimate, because it wasn't clear that we had the political direction to be able to use this 30th of June text to proceed. And you can only have this line by line when you have a text that everybody agrees is a basis. So that's what we got today. So what is new is that we are going to move into this line by line negotiations. Of course, we'll consult, as Ambassador Will said, to see exactly in what format and how that will happen. You know, as I joked at the end of my statement, that if we have to lock ourselves up in a room, we will do so in order to go through this agreement. And I said I would share the keys with Ambassador Wills. So that's what we're hoping to move to now. And we're pretty happy that we've gotten to that stage.
Director General, thank you very much. Ambassador Wills, thank you. Thanks to all of you. The statements of Ambassador Wills and the Director General will be de-restricted and will be on the website sometime soon, whenever that process can be completed. I want to thank you all for your patience and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.